Good afternoon everyone, it's Caroline in Leeds in West Yorkshire. I'm back to do an end of year wrap up. It's Thursday the 31st of December, so I hope everyone is going to have a nice, probably quiet New Year. We will be, but then that's nothing. We've not gone out and partied at New Year for quite some time. I'm planning on settling in front of the fire with the TV and my stitching. I imagine I won't be the only one. This is Flosstube number 14, and as I said, it's going to be an end of year sort of wrap up and talk a bit about my plans for 2021. Apologies for being away so long. It's just been one of those things. I haven't had the sort of headspace really to record much since I think it was the beginning of October was my last one. It's just been so full on, just with the worry for the pandemic and wondering what's going to happen next, and well, you know, when are we next going to be in lockdown? We're currently in tiers here in the UK. We remain in tier 3, which is where we've been since we came out of the last little lockdown, which, it has to be said, for me didn't feel like a lockdown because I was still going into work. The joys of working in education. However, I've got at least the next week working at home because we won't have students in next week. Government announced yesterday. Lovely, to give us all loads of notice for sorting out online lessons, but hey. Yeah, so apart from I've had a period in self-isolation because some colleagues tested positive for coronavirus, so far my family's been fine and healthy, and the most vulnerable member, which is my elderly mother-in-law, has had her first vaccination and should get her second one at the end of next week. So we've had a nice quiet Christmas, not that we particularly do much anyway, just pootling around. I've had time to do a bit of finishing, which you'll see in a bit, and some quilting, which you'll also see in a bit. Other than that, just a little bit of housekeeping. I can be found around the internet, mostly on Twitter, though not so much these days, and mostly Instagram. My handle on both of those is at Caroline A. Kemp, and Caroline is spelled with a K. Show notes for today's episode will be on my blog, which is carolinescorner.blogspot.com. Right, so what have I been up to since I last spoke to you? Well, there's actually been a fair few finishes for a change. I got a bit of a spurt on towards the end of the year. So the first thing I finished, I think I mentioned I was going to work on for Dark October stitching in my last video. That it was Happy Halloween by The Drawn Thread. And I picked it up and worked on it till it was done. Something behind that so I can see it better. There we go. So this is stitched on 28 count country French linen in the colourway chocolate, using the recommended threads from the chart. So mostly DMC. There's one Weeks Dye Works, which was charcoal, which is the black, and one Needle Necessities thread, which is Copper Pennies, which is this one here. Not entirely sure if the Needle Necessities is available. They're now called Threadworks, but I don't know if they do that colour, but I absolutely love it. I think it's a beautiful colour. So yes, so this is done and is on the pile for finishing. I've got a few vague ideas about how I might finish it, but we'll have to see when I get there. So yeah, so that's Happy Halloween, which was start number 1, which started August of 2019, so just over a year to get it finished. Mostly got worked on during Dark October. I think I was at these ghosties here, so just cracked on. There's not a huge amount of stitching, and it was quite an enjoyable stitch, as is all of Drawn Threads designs. Right, I'm just going to have a mouthful of coffee before my next finish. This is my Smaug mug that I got from a Tolkien exhibition at the Bodleian Library. Right, my next finish is a real biggie. I have finished Dorothy. 6 years. 6 years I've been trying to finish Dorothy. She's finally done. So this is Dorothy Walpole by the Scarlet Letter. Here we go. I'm probably not going to be able to get her all in. She's a big girl, even on 40 count. Oh, just about. Just about. There we go. So she stitched on 40 count pearl barley from Lakeside Linens. This is on an Italian linen base, which I'm not sure they would do anymore, but was in my stash. I've been in my stash a while when I started Dorothy back in 2014. And stitched using the Call for DMC from the pattern. So if I go up. So she was a focus piece for this year to get done. And I am very, very pleased to have her done. I now need to save up the money in order to get her framed. I made a couple of alterations to the pattern to put in some personalisation for me. There was a couple of random initials at the end of this row of numbers, so I put in my initials, and I added the year down the bottom here in a space of 2020. So more or less true reproduction, but I always like to, if I can, change some initials or just personalise it a touch. I always like to leave the girl's name on there as well, but just change something else to show that I've stitched it. There we go. Very, very pleased to have Dorothy done. And actually, I've been feeling a bit bereft now because I don't have finished Dorothy Walpole in my stitching plans for next year. And it's just like, what am I going to do if I don't have Dorothy to stitch? Hey ho. Good job I've got plenty of others. So having finished Dorothy, I used a random number generator to work out which whip to work on after that, and it pulled out the smallest whip in my whip pile, which was Pinwheelie by Old Colonial Designs, which was one of my mania starts for this year. So I didn't have a huge amount to do, so I got that one done, and again it's on the finishing pile. When I picked this up, I think I had just one side of the wreath and the alphabet to do, so that one got done as well. Looking forward to getting to finishing that one. And then my only other finishes are actually fully finished, and they were both new starts this year, which is my Christmas ornaments I stitch every year for my children. So this is the ornament for my daughter, which is called Winter Fawn, and it's the Victoria sampler, designs by Kathy Jean. I just stitched it using materials in my stash. I can't even remember what they were. If I had the called for threads, then I used them. If I didn't, then I just pulled the DMC and did a substitution with something that was similar. So it's a mix of DMC and various overdyes from, you know, seeing what I had. And I opted not to put the little buttons on because I figured that was going to be difficult to get hold of, and did Smyrna crosses instead in some raspberry DMC. And then my daughter was quite keen, it got mounted in the pie tin. The original in the magazine was mounted in. This design is from the 2012 issue of the Just Cross Stitch Christmas Ornament special. So yes, so she was very pleased. It actually made it onto the tree before Christmas. That never happens. If I'm lucky, they get on the tree before. Last year I think I made it by New Year's Eve. This year I got one done before Christmas. It's never going to happen again. Just saying. The other ornament I did, which was my new start for December, my daughter's was my new start in November, was this ornament from the work basket called Snowy Snowy Night, pardon me, which I stitched for my son, as he didn't express an interest. Some years he'll choose an ornament, some years he won't, but he gets one anyway. So I just pulled this one out as I fancied stitching it. Again, I substituted materials from my stash. It's on a 36 count linen from Silkweaver, overdyed linen from Silkweaver, and the threads, the white and the blue, are Gloriana's, with some Petite Treasure braid. And then I tried my hand at finishing it similar to it's finished in the magazine, and the curves were an absolute sod. I backed it with a bit of homespun, and then put some ready-made cord that I got from my local haberdashery shop around there, and that made it onto the tree about 3 days ago. It was a bit harder to finish than my daughter's, but yeah, very pleased with how that came out. I absolutely love stitching this one. I do like the work basket designs. I think they're gorgeous. So yeah, that's 5 finishes since my last video. You can tell we're not doing very much other than being at home. Yeah, so that took me up to 10 finishes for the year, I think. I'd have to check. Which is about par for the course. And I actually got some bigger stuff finished this year. Pardon me. Which I'm absolutely thrilled about. Especially finishing Dorothy Walpole, my big Scottish sampler. So yeah, so there was the Scottish sampler, Dorothy Walpole, Happy Halloween, Pomegranate Santa, Emblem of Love, Pinwheelie, 2 ornaments, Poppy Pouch. Oh, it might be 9 finishes. So that's not bad for me. I'll put some pictures in at the end of all my finishes for you. So yeah, so that is all the finishes. So the only bit of finishing I got done was to get the ornaments done, but we'll see how we get on this weekend, because I've still got a bit more time. In between working on all of those, I did get progress on another few whips. So the first, so once I finished Happy Halloween in October, I spent about a week working on one of my class whips. Now this is from Lauren Sawyer of Forget Me Nots in Stitches, CMB, anno 1759, A Sleeping Beauty Awakened. I took this class up at Fobbles a few years ago. This is what she's looking like so far. There we go. I think this is 36 count linen, but I can't remember because I'd have to look back at what I ordered. And she's being stitched with mostly Gentle Arts. Got a lovely bright palette. And there's one of Vera Soir green in there as well. So when I picked her up, I think I was working on this band of acorns. Or it might even have been the pomegranates, I can't quite remember. So I definitely worked the acorn band. I definitely worked this it might have been the grapes I was working on. Definitely worked the acorn band. I definitely worked the pomegranates. And then I worked down, I had 4 bands I worked down this side that are just done in the forest green. I don't have a picture of there are various different ways you could stitch this sampler. The original sampler was all knots and is laid out the 2 sides like I do. I've doing it, but it was all white on white. Now I opted not to do, and it was all French knots. There was no way I was doing a sampler of French knots. No way. Some people did. So you had a choice of, you could do it as a white work sampler in French knots in the 2 panels, but Lauren has stitched so you could do it as just one long sampler in the white work, or you could do it in colour. She also charted it in colour, and again either one long sampler or 2 short, or running 2 bands side by side like I'm doing. But the pictures I have are of the colour sampler just as one long sampler. So this is the top of it. And actually this here is where, fold it over, and get an idea of is the bands I'm stitching down the side. So I'm down to about there. So that's the top half. That's the second half at the bottom, and the other half of it. So I've got about a week stitching in on CMB. It's a very pretty sampler. I do enjoy working on her. I look forward to her coming up again. What I'm doing is using a random number generator to pick out whips to work on once I've met my goals for the month. So yes, so nice little bit of progress on her. Right, in November, once I had finished my ornament and I'd finished Dorothy, I picked up another old class whip to work and pinwheelie. After pinwheelie, I picked up another class whip to work on, which is from the second Ackworth sampler soiree back in 2008. How will this show up? Because it's a whitework sampler that was designed for the just to teach us a few whitework techniques. So I don't have a picture of the full sampler because it was Ava Lotta Hansen from the Royal School of Needlework who was doing the class, and she'd left her finished sampler on the frame on the train, unfortunately, and there weren't any pictures of it. So this time round I was working on the drawn thread, so I withdrew all the threads for the drawn thread work, obviously, and then I made a start on doing the picots and winding. This will be an acorn motif eventually when it's done. So I was quite pleased with my progress. I was very happy to get to the end of withdrawing all the threads, because that's been a bit of a slog, and onto the fun bit of the stitching. So again, nice to see a little bit of progress on that, and hopefully next time it comes out we'll get a bit further. So in Christmas, once I'd finished Chris's ornament, which was my sole goal for December, I decided I wasn't going to get stuck in on a new focus piece. The random number generator gave me stained glass sunflower to work on. So I got a little bit more done on this. I was working on this orange border. This is a needlepoint kit, tapestry kit. This is my oldest whip by some way. I started it back at 2000, I think. 2000, 2001. So yeah, so I just spent a couple of days on this. I finished off this border on the mandala and made a start on the green border that goes all the way around it. I need to get some more thread actually for this, because I've not got quite enough of some of the yellows left to finish it. It's stitched with Appleton's wool, so I think I've identified which threads I need to buy. I was just waiting to get through the Christmas period before I order them. So this one will be out again next year, but I'll talk about that more in my plans coming up. Then when I finished met my goal on the sunflower cushion, stained glass sunflower, I spun for another whip, for another class whip this time, and it brought Mistress L's sampler, again by Lauren Sauer of Forget Me Nots in Stitches, and I took this class 30th of June 2013 because Lauren was kind enough to sign my chart. It's in 2 bits, but this is the whole sampler, this is the top, and I've been working on this section here. So this will get worked on again tonight for one more day. I was doing this last black work band, about halfway across this black work band when I picked it up, so I finished that, put in the orange marmalade queen stitches, and then moved on to this alphabet with the Montenegrin borders. So I've got some numbers to do and a little bit of black work around it to do, which I'll make a start on tonight, and then that will go away until it next comes up. This is being stitched with sampler threads and some silks. These letters are all in a Vera Soie. A bit mixed up. So this is the palette of silks. Need to work on my technique a la Nicole. And these are the sampler thread colours. And the dark green at the top is Forest Glade, the same as in CMB. It's definitely a colour that Lauren's quite fond of. So I'm quite pleased with my progress on this one. My husband looked over at it and said, "Oh, you're making really good go. Yeah, that's really growing." And so, until I turned around to him and said, "Yeah, I'm still not at the quarter way done yet." And he went, "Oh." So yeah, yeah, and I'll make a start on these number row tonight, and then it will probably then it will go away again. But very much enjoyed working on this one and CMB. It's been nice to see them out again. Right, and of course there has been a little bit of stash. Not huge amounts of stash, but a little bit. First off, I was kitting up, as I said in my last video, I'm kitting up stuff I want to start in 2021. So I got some fabric for Rachel Howells, which will be probably my sampler September start. I think I've got Rachel down for. And I think the silks I got last time worked quite well on the, this is just Newcastle cream, 40 count Newcastle cream linen that I've got for Rachel. The other whip I needed to buy, new start I needed to buy fabric for was Birds of a Feather by Brenda Gervais, and I got the called for fabric, which is I think 35 count Confederate grey. Sorry, I lost my chart. Let's see, those are the thread size I bought last time. So I can't remember when I've scheduled that one in for a start. I've mapped my starts out for this year. So you'll see that again at some point. When I bought the Weeks Dye Works linen, I also got some Lady Dot trim, the pom-pom trim this time. The plan is that I'm going to use this to finish Happy Halloween when I get there. Trim. Focus. So yeah. And there were a small number of charts. When I bought the linen for Rachel Howells, I got Sarah Platt by Pimbury Lane. I also took advantage of a small sale that Kitten Stitcher had on her PDF charts and got myself Maria Finney. And I got Anne Morrison because there has to be a hats chart in here somewhere. I did like this, but the real incentive was I wanted to get Heather Jardine, as I have some very specific plans for Heather. I am looking forward to stitching eventually Anne Morrison. She looks a lovely sampler, very much my style. So Heather is going to be my January the 1st start. This year I gained a very new niece. Unfortunately, I've not been able to meet her yet because she's in New Zealand. We were supposed to go this Christmas to go and spend some time with her. My sister lives out there, and obviously with COVID we can't. So I'm not sure when we'll get to meet Ellie, off Zoom, obviously. She's going to think it very strange when she finally sees everyone and we're not in little squares on a computer. But there you go. So I wanted to stitch Heather Jardine as her birth sampler. So I have kitted her up. I'm going to use some 40 count like mocha, I think it is, Zweigart linen to have in my stash, and I've pulled silks for her. There's one Gloriana and a mix of Avera and needlepoint silks. So where I have the charted colours, I've pulled them. Otherwise I pulled the DMC and then did a best match to the silks I did have, rather than buying some more. Nicola did say when she was talking about Heather on her YouTube videos that she wanted to people to stitch her from stash. So I have the silks on a lovely thread keep that I got from Pretty Little Thread Keeps on Facebook. Hazel. This is actually a two-sided one with some artwork by Margaret MacDonald, who best known possibly for being the wife of Charles Rennie Mackintosh, but was a phenomenal artist in her own right, and I've always loved her stuff. I grew up in Glasgow, so I saw quite a bit of it. So I was quite pleased to get that one. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to starting Heather tomorrow. And then she's going to be my focus piece. So the way I've decided to do my rotation next year is to have one focus piece a month and then see how we get on, and meet that goal. And then once I've met that goal, I can pick out one of my whips to work on. So my goal for January is to do border and that first alphabet, which should be infinitely doable. And I would, if I can, like to get it done for my niece's first birthday at the end of I think it's May. So there we go. So yeah, so that's going to be my first goal, is stitch Heather Jardine. When I finished Heather, I'm going to go back and finish the oldest class whip that I have, which is one you have seen this last year because I have been working on it a bit. That's the three-sided etui from C.A. Wells. And I've made a good chunk of progress on that this year. I've only got one more of these big triangles to do, but I also have a kit to make a box liner for one of these Lodray almond boxes. So I'll be doing that as well. So should be able to get that finished. And then my plan is to work on this. until it is done. It seemed to work this year, having 3 sort of focuses, and I managed to get, and I had enough stitching time that I got them done. So I'm going to take that model from this year, where I focused on finishing Scottish Sampler, Emblem of Love and Dorothy Walpole, into this year, and my 3 focuses will be Heather, C.A. Wells and Stained Glass Sunflower. And see if I can knock a couple of more of the older ones off the whip pile. I say, and once I've met my goal with those for the month, then I shall just, I've either use a random number generator, or I think they've now released the Tiny Decisions app for Android. So I shall pick one of, I shall probably use one of those to decide which whip I'm going to do. I'm going to continue having one new start a month. I have planned them out. Apart from May, when, as it's Mania, I will do 5 starts again, and then work on whips through May like I've done before. Again, randomly selecting which whips I work on. And if there's a sale happening that month that I've got a piece that fits, like Dark October or Sampler September, then I'll pull one of my whips and work on that for that month. So I don't want to set too many plans in stone, because heaven knows what 2021 is going to throw at us. We'll see. Anyway, I'm going to pause this now and tidy my stitching up, and then I shall be back with my knitting. See you in a minute. Right, I'm back with my knitting, and I have a few knitting finishes to share as well. You will remember in my last video I showed you that I'd cast off my Impressionist shawl. I've now had a chance to block it, and I'm absolutely delighted with how it's come out. It's a bit big, I can't really fit it all in. There we go. Loving how it looks now it's finished. This was a mystery knit along that Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade ran in 2019. I didn't get around to knitting it then, so I did it this last year. And it's knit in River Knits BFL 4-ply, and the colourways were Impressionist. What else could I use for an Impressionist shawl? Best. Or Mermaid. And the final colour used was called Cairn. They were my three colours in this shawl, and I'm absolutely delighted with how it's blocked up, and I'm enjoying wearing it. Actually, off the needles since we last spoke are my socks. These are also by Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade. The chart pattern is the Cozy Cottage, Shell Cottage socks from the Sock Society number 2, which was the 2019 Sock Society. They are definitely not Helen's sort of nice, gentle, subtle palette of socks. The yarn is from the Knitting Goddess. It was a sock club she ran in 2016 called Return to the Disc World. So this colourway is called Dark Morris. However, my son persistently refers to them as the Ronnie the Rhino socks, because they are pretty much the colours of the local mascot for our local rugby league team. So again, very glad to have them done. I think I've been knitting them for most of the year because they're usually my travel project socks. They're what I knit at dance lessons and swimming lessons and waiting around for the kids. Obviously there's not been as much of that this year. So I'm very pleased to get them done. The last two finishes I have were both gifts and they have been gifted to their recipients. So I shall have to I'll insert some pictures of them. The first one I will insert here. This is a flax light sweater that I knit for a colleague of mine who's gone on maternity leave just before Christmas. So I was looking for a little something I could knit her that I could knit using stash yarn. And I had some West Yorkshire Spinners sock yarn. I think it's the signature sock yarn. And I think this colourway is the Goldfinch colourway, but I could be wrong. From their Birds series. So yeah, so this is the yarn I have left over. So I used that to knit the flax light, which knit up really quickly. I did the 0 to 6 months size and quite enjoyed knitting that one. My first tin can knits pattern. It won't be my last, I don't think. I'm feeling I can feel the lush coming on at some point. We shall see. Anyway, the recipient loved it, which is good, and we now await the baby. The next gift I knit was from my niece in New Zealand, and I will put a couple of pictures in here. Right, full disclosure, this doll I started knitting for my daughter when she was 1, or just before she turned 1. She will be 13 in March. I got most of the bits knit, then I was pregnant with number 2 and I just did not have the headspace for the finishing. So I sort of got bits put together and then it kind of got too late to do any real she'd grown out of dolls, so she sat on the shelf and then I was musing on what, and then Ellie came along, so I decided to do it, finish it for Ellie. So this is in the pattern. This is from a kit I bought at the Harrogate Knitting and Stitching show, I say about 12 years ago. So it's all, the materials are all by AK Traditions, which are an Australian company. It's all merino wool. So I knit a dolly and did her a dress and boots, and had enough yarn left over to knit the coat as well. For her. I mean, there are various other patterns because it came with a load of patterns for other clothes, so I may or may not knit some more stuff for Ellie. There were also clothes to make for the doll, so we shall see. But she's arrived safely in New Zealand. I've seen pictures that suggest my niece quite likes her. So that is definitely long overdue being off the shelf and with someone who can play with her. So yes, so very glad to get that one done. So, having finished all that gift knitting, I decided it was time. I was getting a little twitchy at not having a shawl on the needles. Gotta have a shawl on the needles. So I went through my stash of curious handmade patterns, pulled out this one from the Shawl Society number 2. It's the Sprite's Fen shawl from about 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm doing this in lace weight. It is in some lace, 100% lustrous lace from Natural Born Dyers, which is 55% Blueface Leicester and 45% silk. And the colourway is Blue Bottle. And here is my start. So here is the yarn. As you can see, it has an absolutely gorgeous sheen to it. And it's just sort of subtly blue, purple, little bit of green. So here is where some paper behind this, you can see it. So it's a half pie shawl. I'm about to do the next set of increases. And I've just passed the 5%. Place part on the shawl. It's just got a gentle feather and fan pattern in it so far, and garter stitch rows, so it's proving to be. And then I think there's, looking at the pattern, there's some eyelets when you get further down. So it was a nice soothing knit to cast on at the beginning of the Christmas holidays. Very much looking forward to cracking on with that. Next week, this week I've been working on my Inoculaba cardigan. I think I'm massacring this, by Carrie Westerman, which is in this lovely book called This Thing of Paper that Carrie put out a few years ago. This is the finished cardigan, fantastically modelled by Carrie as always. So it's a cropped cardigan with bracelet length sleeves. I think when I last showed you it in October, I was part way up the back. So I have finished the back up and finished the fronts, because and joined at the shoulders. I've done one sleeve, and I have just this last week done all the short rows for the sleeve top on this one, and started working my way down the sleeve. Now that it's not taking very long to do, so I should get it done shortly. Sorry, I'm just going to have to pause because there's someone lurking outside the door. Just bear with me. Right, sorry, my daughter needed to come in and get something. Yeah, so this is being knit in West Yorkshire Spinners, BFLDK. It's a nice navy blue colour. Very pleased with how quickly this is coming together. It's about only less than 6 months and I'm almost finished. So I've just got the sleeve to do and the neck and button bands. I took advantage of being in Leeds just before Christmas to visit one of our local haberdashery shops and buy some buttons, so I'd got them in stock, just in case we go back into lockdown, which I'm sure we will at some point. So yeah, so I'm very pleased with my progress on this one, and it's, as with all of Carrie's patterns, an absolute delight to knit. Right. You may have noticed I don't have any socks on the needles at the moment. I have, however, lined up my next set of socks to knit. It is going to be Cliff Walk socks, also by Helen Stewart, from season 2 of the Sock Society, and I'm going to knit it in these lovely Knitting Goddess self-striping yarn. Again, this is from the Back to the Discworld Club in 2016 that I was a member of, and the colourway is the God of Evolution, which is all blues and greens. So I'm thinking that Cliff Walk socks should work very well in these. So I'm not quite sure when I'll cast them on. They may well get cast on when I get to the end of my cardigan, which I'm hoping wouldn't be too much longer. Should get that done by the end of January, maybe into February. We'll see. Right, I'm going to pause the video again because I forgot to pick up the yarn, my yarn stash. Show you that. And we'll move on to quilting and maybe even a little bit of books. Just bear with me. Right, I'm back. I did indulge this last couple of months in a little bit of yarn stash. Been trying to resist the updates from Ange of Meadow Yarns, but one of the ones just before Christmas was just too much in my colour palette, so I succumbed to these 3 beauties. These are all the Lithe Fingering 4-ply, which is 60% superwash merino, 20% silk and 20% yak. And the colourways are An Accidental Glimpse, The Weight of the Sky and Vibrant Lavender. My plan for these yarns is they will eventually become a stillness shawl. Now, the stillness shawl was this year's mystery knit along from Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade, and I did buy the chart, but obviously I was working on the Impressionist. Thought I'd better get the Impressionist shawl knit first. So yes, so they are very much my colour palette, and I'm really looking forward to knitting up that shawl eventually. Something else that's been happening, that I've got into a nice little routine with, is I think at the end of my last video I showed you the first blocks for a mystery quilt I signed up for back in February, called The Name of the Rose by Sheila Christensen, at Mystery Stitcher Mystery Quilter on Instagram. The rest of the family over the summer got into playing D&D with a friend of my son's. Obviously that's moved online now, as they can't meet in the garden anymore. But every Sunday afternoon they spend a couple of hours playing D&D. So I've been trying to carve out that couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon to work on the mystery quilt, and I'm doing really quite well. I kind of need to, because I've signed up for another one starting next year. There's one. So anyway, so last time I showed you I'd got clue 1 done. So these are clue 2. Clue 3. Clue 4. Clue 5. Clue 6. clue 7. And I am currently working on clue 8, which leaves me with one last clue to do, which is clue 9. Clue 10 is the putting it together. I'm doing this mystery quilt through Lisa of the Modern Quilt Club. She's a friend of mine in Leeds that I met through various crafty groups back in the day when you could meet up in person. And she's been running, she runs these mystery quilts for Sheila in the UK and Europe. So I've signed up for one starting in February called Sparkle and Shine, which I'm looking forward to. The colours look gorgeous. Yeah, it's going to be sort of greens and tealy colours this time. I'm also going to do the small one. I'm doing the large size of Name of the Rose. So yeah, so I'm really pleased with how much progress I've made on Name of the Rose since October. I'm looking forward to getting that piece together, and then I'll have to decide how probably somebody else is going to quilt it, because I don't think it's going to be queen size by the time I'm finished putting all the borders on. So I think it will be a case of sending it to somebody to quilt. Excuse me. So that's on my whips. I have a couple of other things I was going to share that I got for Christmas. One of them was this lovely little tin that was one of my Christmas presents. It's Curious Notions, and it has a little magnet in the top of the tin. Okay. This came from a shop called Beyond Measure that are over in Todmorden, and she does the most lovely sewing notions and things you never thought you needed. There's always those, isn't there? I also got these absolutely lovely little snips, Japanese snips. They are tiny. And the kit came with this little button, ceramic button, which again has a magnet in it, and a counting pin. Let's see if I can see it. There we go. Very pleased to have got those for Christmas. My family know me quite well. Well, they get a fairly detailed list of what I want. I also got a couple of books that might be of interest to people. One's a recipe book. It's called The Little Library Year by Kate Young, and it's recipes inspired by books, which is quite up my street. I've got her first book, which was The Little Library Cookbook. Then asked for this one for Christmas. I'm still working my way through deciding what I might fancy baking out of it and cooking out of it. The other book I got was this one called This Golden Fleece by Esther Rutter, which Esther took a knitting journey around the UK, knitting, looking at the knitting traditions in various bits of the UK and knitting something appropriate. Well, she was doing its sort of social history of the wool and the wool trade and knitting, and how important the wool textiles have been to the history of the UK. Now, I've actually got 2 copies of this because I forgot I put it on my Christmas list and bought myself a copy. So if any of you don't have a copy of this Golden Fleece and would like one, let me know in the comments below and I can post it off. I'm quite happy to post worldwide, so don't worry about that. Just might take a long time to get to you. Please don't mention giveaway or anything like that, because I want it to make sure it goes to someone who really wants it. So let me know if you'd like it. If there's more than one of you, then we'll draw names out of a hat. All right. And then I'll just go talk about the book I'm reading at the moment, which is a biography of Anne Bronte called Take Courage. I'm actually listening on the fabulous Craftlit podcast to Anne's second book, The Tenant to Wildfell Hall. I've almost got to the end of it now. I'm running a bit behind. Heather has got to the end of it. This book's quite interesting in that the biography, it's not a linear biography. The author has takes aspects of the people round Anne, because it's very difficult to, there's not a lot of information about Anne herself. So the characters in her books, her siblings, her parents, her aunt, folk in her circle, and looks at particular aspects of Anne's life through them. So I'm really enjoying this, and I recommend it if you have any interest in the Brontes at all. Right, I think that is everything. It's going to be a long one, this one. This is what happens when you don't record for ages. I'm not going to do a year-end whip parade because I did a whip parade only a couple of videos ago. So there's not a huge amount that's changed since then, other than I finished a few things. Yeah, so hopefully my plan is to be back before the end of January, so I can show you what I've gone up to, and to try and be a bit more regular at recording videos. But we might have to see how the world pans out on that one. So again, I hope you all had a good Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate. I hope you have a lovely new year. Nice, chilled, socially distant New Year, because I think we really need to do that. Unless, of course, you're in New Zealand. Then feel free to party for the rest of us. And take care, everyone. I say I will try and get back before the end of January, but I'm not making any promises, because every time I try and promise something, my life throws a wobbler and I never manage to deliver. So take care, stay well. I hope you're all okay. See you then. Bye bye.